Welcome to the Founder Experience, where we're charting the unpredictable waters of startup ventures. I'm Nathan Williams.
And I'm Alex Gutjahr.
When I first moved to Germany, I started my first company. And forgive me if I've told you this already, Alex, but I had an interesting experience and a bit of a challenge adapting to living in this new environment. My first company that I started here, I was new at starting companies in Germany. And what's the first thing you need when you start a company? I don't know about you, but for me, it's business cards. Always business cards. You need good business.
But you have them. You have them even before you start the company. That's
even before you need something
cards
for people to look at. Something, and I really went all out on these business cards. One of my good friends had these amazing business cards that were shiny, had a little bit of spot varnish on the back, and so what I did is I said I need to have the coolest business cards too, and I don't think digital will ever replace a physical business card. And so I went American Psycho on these business cards. I hired a designer to design like these really cool looking ones with a very elegant logo. And then I got a spot varnish on the back so that it looked shiny, but just enough part on the logo. And
do you still have one of those from those days?
Probably around here somewhere, but I've designed all my business cards the same way ever since. And so what do you need after you get these beautiful things designed? You need a printer.
Yes.
And so what I did is I went on Google Maps and I just, my German wasn't nearly as good as it is today, which is still terrible, but wasn't nearly as good as it was today. So I just looked up, how do you say printer in German, which is Druckerei. And so I went up
Druckerei. Copy shop. Or
I
copy shop.
I didn't think copy shop. I just looked Druckerei and I found one and I called them. And I said, and in my broken German, I said, hello, I'm calling because I need business cards. And they said, okay. And I said, yes, I've got a file and I need 500 of them and they have spot varnish on the back. I've got the full design done. How does it work? Do I have to walk over and give you a thumb drive or do I send it to you via email? And they said, Mr. Williams, is this a joke? And I said, no. And they said, sir, we're the Bundesdruckerei. We're the national printer. We print the money and the passports for the country.
I take some. That's fine. Just give me the business cards. I also take passports, but just get the business cards done. So this was the first hit.
I didn't know what the word Bundes meant.
Yeah, I see. It's confusing.
But I tell you something, is although that was mildly embarrassing, it was also incredibly funny. And there was a fellow sitting next to me because I was in a co-working space who just laughed. And when I told him what that call was about. And so afterwards I said, you know what, this story is going to be my opener whenever I meet a new German colleague at a networking event. And I always love having 3 or 4 stories in my back pocket that I can start a conversation with, especially at a work event. I don't know how you deal with being an introvert in a big social setting where you've got to present yourself and everyone starts the conversation with, so what do you do for work? Or what is your business? And I have a lot of introverted tendencies myself. And this is one of the ways that I deal with it.
I love that.
I'm ready to go.
Storytelling is such a great topic here. Or coming up with stories that you can use to warm up a conversation. And I always, especially with that question that you just raised, like how do you introduce yourself? I always, when I started my first agency, I had trouble saying I'm a founder, or like I'm not sure what I even said, like how I introduced myself. But then later, a few years in, what I usually said is I explained the story how I ended up in my own company, because I started out working for a consulting firm, And then 2 years in, I figured I can do this by myself, because they always ask you, bring in new clients, nurture those clients, manage your colleagues, and just manage the project. And I was like, man, I can do this by myself. Why should I be working for you? So I was very, very naive and arrogant. So this is how I got started. I thought I know better. And then I learned, no, I didn't, because then it's much, much harder. So what I try to do here is usually being very open. It's a little bit vulnerable, but I don't see it that bad, because I'm fine speaking about these things, saying, yeah, well, I was foolish initially, but had I known what I know today, I'm not sure if I had started my first company. So I usually try to start these conversations when I introduce myself, how I got here, the mistakes I made along the way, which is also kind of the theme of this podcast, right? I'm fine sharing these, and I think it's a great way to connect with people if you just share something first, and then they feel more comfortable to chime in or open up. And I think stories like these usually help me to get started.
I find that storytelling, it's almost like playing a musical instrument. You can make your audience feel a certain way by how you tell the stories you choose to tell, and the overall way you carry yourself in the story. And at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I found that I wanted to get through the story, just to get to the end of it, and to try. And
Yeah.
I found that I wasn't nearly as good. I didn't realize just how important it was that it wasn't about the story, that it was about how I made the audience feel. And there's a certain amount of when you're learning to sing, or when you're learning to become a musician, or be an actor, or whatever it is, it's called finding your voice. And there's a certain amount of trouble you need to go to find your voice. Like, you're not going to be someone else. You're not going to tell a story in their style. But in the same way, like, so much of being a founder is storytelling, and making sure that people are listening to you and hanging off your every word, and finding your voice so that you've got a personal brand in your storytelling and in your style is really, really critical. And the only real way to do that is by telling these stories over and over and over.
Yeah. It's do you know Matthew Dix? The guy who wrote Storyworthy? Because I think he's really famous for his storytelling skills, and he's also coaching, which is how I got to know him, because I booked a coaching session with him. We tried in 1 hour get through as many aspects of storytelling or coming up with a story, and also for customers, right? Because once you start seeing your job also as a founder from that angle, that you're telling stories, you can apply this everywhere, right? So this starts with employees or potential employees. When you speak with them for the first time, you're telling them the story of what this will look like, right? Why it's worthwhile to join the journey. And the same then also with clients when you're pitching them. And then you want to create a story how both of you get to a desired outcome. And then you use suspense, surprise, like all these elements, right? And it's really like an art once you start just thinking about the individual elements and how they contribute to the story. And it's what you said. They have to hang on to your every word, right? And I think Steve Jobs did a great job there. Like, no pun intended, but I think he was really great at doing this. He understood this early, right? And just keeping you engaged and making sure, okay, there's even a twist at the end, right? And there's just one more thing. And yeah, I think this is one of the tools that once you start thinking about it, or try to be deliberate about how you manufacture stories for different purposes, that's really powerful to use.
One of the things that I just learned recently about myself upon reflection, it's really tempting to find one type of story or one approach that sort of works and then overuse it. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I was overusing a little bit is I was using self-deprecating humor.
Oh, Yeah.
Yeah, you see where this is going.
Yeah.
Um, Self-deprecating humor is very common in order to get people to laugh with you. And you know, you could say things like, "Oh yes, I'm the pretty face that they keep around just because you know, like you know, your whole team is
Yeah.
introducing themselves. I'm the head project manager. And of course I'm the CEO. So you know, everyone else is introducing themselves and their qualifications and their background, and I go, "Oh, I'm the pretty face that keeps around." And in a way, what that does is it's not useless. It's very useful. It's good to level the playing field, to make people feel at ease, to make people open up a little bit. But when it's overused, not everyone has met you before. Not everyone might get your same style of joke, and it might undermine people's confidence in you as well. And
Yes.
this is something that I was starting to realize, not only with the people that were strangers, but also within my own team. That sometimes, even though I had known these people for years and we'd worked together and everyone knew my competence level, they would start to like subtly say things where they would almost doubt my competence
Yeah.
when because of an overuse of self-deprecating humor. And I tried just a different way of telling the story on an important call recently, where is strange for me, I know, but I just introduced myself with my background and what I'd accomplished and what I had thought and believed at the beginning at MindSpider and when we got started, and the publications that I've done and things like that. And the tone was completely different of the conversation, right? Because what was required wasn't to put the other company at ease. What was required at the time was to give them confidence that I knew what I was talking about. And so knowing what has to be done at what time is very important, and when to use which tool.
Yes, and I think especially that for that example, the frequency is crucial, right? So if you do it once, like in a setting, that's fine. It can warm up a conversation. But if people expect this from you all the time, then it's like then you have a problem. So I just wanted to ask if you can relate to that. If there can be stories that keep us stuck, right? Stories that we also tell ourselves, which is I think super important. That's why so far we spoke about like stories for other people or clients, etc. But I think we also keep telling ourselves stories, right? So and I think there's a danger of being stuck in place because you keep telling yourself a story that you cannot escape. Is that something that you experienced so far?
A lot, so much. And yeah, have you ever heard of the term "to flip the script"?
I've heard it, yes.
It's a phrase that's very important and key in these things, because you often find yourself following the script of a story that has happened many times, but it doesn't always have to end up the way that it did in the past. You can flip the script. You can say, well, maybe I'm not a passive observer in this interaction. Maybe I can be an active observer. Maybe I don't have to be the victim. I can flip the script and be the protagonist. Maybe I don't have to be the self-deprecating, easy to get along with jokey guy. Maybe I can be the professional. Or the opposite. Maybe I don't have to be the professional who has everything in order. Maybe I can be the relatable person. And so knowing what the story is and knowing how to flip the script is really quite key, and especially with ourselves.
That's easier said than done, right? Because most of the time you need at least to be aware of these. Like that's the first thing, you need to be aware of everything that's running in your head, like stories, etc. And what I found useful when I realize I'm running down a script, like thinking through something where I felt like, okay, this isn't going anywhere. I just would tell myself stop, like out loud, right? It's not because if I try to compete in like or solve this in the mind, it usually didn't work. But when I realize, okay, this is I'm just doing something because I've done it before, and this feels scripted. I just say to myself, like even if no one's around, I say stop, and that kind of breaks the circuit, right, of just going down that story again and again. So I found that helpful, but I think it's probably a rabbit hole to talk about this in greater detail. But like stories are generally huge.
When I had to let someone go from my company a few years ago, I was never very good at terminating people. It doesn't feel good, especially because I want to be the good person, the good boss. I want to,
Yeah.
I want to run a happy company where people get along well, but sometimes it doesn't work. And one thing that helped me to do what needed to be done in a respectful way, but also to see myself properly, is I was playing Billie Eilish's Bad Guy on repeat, where she goes, "I'm the bad guy." Do 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 do.
Okay.
Sometimes you
Why
have to
is
tell
that?
yourself these stories, man.
Okay, so but
and
wouldn't that
it's okay to
intensify
be
the
the
whole
bad
thing?
guy. Like today,
I
I'm
see.
not the good guy. Today, I'm the bad guy, and it's okay. I'm the bad guy. I'm going in, and it's okay to reframe how I see myself.
Yeah, this is yeah, and this is I mentioned this the last time when we spoke about proposals. How I realized that you're very good at reframing certain situations, right? Because when we spoke about proposals, I think I said this after we recorded, that when I got when I had this like big potential client and they just did not decide to work with us. I always saw it as a failure, like in myself, because I was the only one pitching, right? But and then you said in passing, okay, it's not that you lost, it's that someone else won, right? Which is the same, like it's the same statement, but it's a different frame of mind. It's like, oh yeah, of course, someone has to win. Okay, it's not us, it's them. Fine, right? And I realized this is something that that you seem to do a lot. And then you said it's one of the key responsibilities of also a founder or slash CEO. So where else do you see that being used?
Someone once told me, I don't remember who, I don't remember where, but I know I stole it from someone,
Mhm.
um,
That's
that
good.
that starting a business is a little bit like the old cartoon character Wile E. Coyote walking off a cliff, but
Hmm.
he doesn't fall down until he looks.
Yeah.
And this type of storytelling and reframing and talking about how to see certain events, the events are the same, but how you interpret them and how you perceive them is 100% of human experience. Every last thing you experience in your whole life, and this is true of everyone else in the world, is only experienced through a set of filters that of past experience, of emotion, and of story and relatability to us, to other stories and other things that have happened. That's how we experience the world. And so being able to shape perception is key to everything. It's key to selling. It's key to maintaining confidence in yourself, in with your team, with customers. It's all about what are the elements that help build this, build trust in me, in my company, in my product. What are the elements that build build the emotions that I want to build? And it doesn't mean there's no objective reality. Of course there is, but what it does mean is that there's a lot of power through that to understand the subjective reality and to communicate the subjective reality. You know, if if someone, like, if someone comes in second in the Olympics in a race, right? They might be disappointed because they were almost first. It was very, very close. And in some cases, maybe it's right to be disappointed because they didn't give their all. But maybe it's also right to say, I'm second in the world. Like I was only a few milliseconds away from the number one spot. It's who you compare it to. It's what your goals are. It's what you want people to perceive you as. And I think that remembering this is very powerful for maintaining motivation as well. because as you go through your business, you're going to be in an emotional up and down roller coaster. Every day, there's going to be new challenges, new things. And usually, the only difference between a really bad event and a really good event is just another event that adds clarity to it or adds a
Mm-hmm.
different way of looking at it. You know, um, I lose a client, but then someone else gets the client and they're terrible to work with and they don't pay. And nothing has changed about my losing the client, but that further information later changes my perception of that event. We dodged a bullet. And this is how, this is how the brain is wired to work, and why it's so important to be in charge of these stories that get told.
Yeah, especially if we construct our own reality through these filters, right? And I think Derek Sivers has a nice book which is called "Useful Not True," right? Which goes in a similar direction. It's if you're making things up anyway, and there's of course objective truth, but if your filters and your biases, whatever, just getting into the way of seeing that clear, you might as well come up with something that's useful for what you want to achieve, right? And then you can start reframing things the way they help you to make progress, right? Because this is something that I haven't done initially, because I just took things with a negative bias, and I was like, oh, this is bad, and that would just prevent me from making progress as much as I could have, because I was just devastated because we lost a client, whatever, right? And then it took a couple of days for me to recover from that, because I've always felt like I failed the company, right? You have employees, etc., and then they rely on you to bring in new business, and I failed, right? And I couldn't reframe the situation in that moment to say, okay, it's fine, let's move on. Instead, I let it just get close to me, and then wasn't able to make progress from there. So I think that's important. If you're constructing your own reality anyway, then just make it useful.
It's also one thing that's important to remember is that it's okay sometimes if there's no silver lining. Not every bad experience has a silver lining, and that's part of the framing, right? If something sucks, sometimes it helps to just say, you know what, this sucks. We're not going to move on tomorrow. Today we just need to take a day and acknowledge just how much this sucks, and that's part of the framing and part of the storytelling, and that's just honesty, right? But it's funny when you say that, there it does seem when you say that that storytelling is really in two parts, is what that brings to mind. It's the framing of the story, and then the telling of the story. And I think that in many ways the telling is as important as the framing. It's so framing the story is how you see it. Is this bad? Is this good? Is this somewhere in the middle, and we can look at the positive or the negative aspect of it? But in the telling of the story, that's where the emotion comes in. And I remember when I started learning about this, someone recommended that I look at great speech givers, orators, and look at how they delivered, because everyone has their own cadence to their voice. They have their own way of holding themselves. I remember looking at politicians. Obama was great. He was an excellent orator. I don't know if you've ever heard an Obama speech. Obama has a cadence where he would raise his voice up until the middle of the sentence, and then, after a pause, he'd finish quickly.
I
And
never
by
realized that.
doing this in the middle of your sentence, you feel, well,
Hooked.
want to hear the rest of it.
Yes, exactly.
And there was others like Bill Clinton. He would always be famous for pointing with his thumb, because people hate it when a person points their
Ooh.
finger.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of these different things: body language, open body language, using your hands, using a soft voice versus an active voice. You really have the power to ebb and flow, and to raise and to lower the energy in the whole room with
Mm-hmm.
just your voice and how you present yourself. And this, I feel, is a super important aspect of the founder's storytelling, because so often you're in that situation.
I would even argue most of the time you're in that situation. Like whenever you're interacting internally or externally, it's always there. And I love that you also brought in body language, because especially when I think it's like, I'm not sure if it's that intense when you're doing like online meetings, but certainly when you're in front of an audience, right? They see so many more things than just hearing what you're saying, but then just saying, okay, as you said, how do you hold yourself? And one bit of advice I got, and I unfortunately forgot where that came from, is that you should feel comfortable claiming space in a room, right? You shouldn't make yourself small or anything, and you should of course not lie on the table and just claim all that space, but something in between where you feel comfortable just claiming space in the physical room. And then because that also relaxes people surrounding you. So it's these few bits that I also then try to keep in mind. I do it less these days, of course, but I still find it super useful. That's it for this episode of The Founder Experience. If you enjoyed it, do us a favor, hit subscribe wherever you are listening, whether that's Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. If you've got a second, leave a rating or a review. It really helps. And you can find more episodes and behind-the-scenes stuff on our website, founderexperience.fm. And if you've got feedback or business ideas that you want us to talk about, shoot us a message at hello@founderexperience.fm. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you next time.